Hi, Saskatoon. Let's talk public engagement because it seems to be talked about a lot in the news. Lynne Lacroix is the Director of Community Services for the City of Saskatoon. So when it comes to public engagement, she's supposed to be the catch-all, and the lack of proper public engagement also should reflect on her ability to do things. And so I think we should take a good look in the last years of the city's efforts for public engagement and where they failed that I'm aware of. So the city did the South Caswell Hill plan and a bunch of other plans, and then they bundled all that up and they're working on the bus barns. So they sent out an RFP. This is after years of effort. In that RFP, request for proposal, they included a bunch of the public engagement to show what the community really thought of their area and what their vision was for the future. Within that document was something very offensive to me. They aren't watching at all what they're doing with public engagement. They only use it to their end to get to the direction that they want. So they pick a point where they want to end up, and then they figure out what public engagement they have to do to get there. That's not the way the process is supposed to work, but that's how the city's been using it. So this South Caswell Hill now, we still don't know what's going on with the bus barns, do we? Let's look at the farmers market. They pushed out people that were hardworking and did their thing there. No, that wasn't good enough. Now Ideas Inc. is supposed to be going in there for $1 million that we're going to pay to put them in there. And yet there's still no contract. And it was supposed to be done a long time ago. So is that falling through the cracks just the same as the bus barns? And that public engagement and all that direction, do we even need what Ideas Inc. was proposing with a little restaurant and a little food place? Now look at the festival site. They did public engagement, but it was very slanted. They never indicated the full cost for the projects. So we have a range of what? Less than $2 million to almost $12.9 million for the high end. They very selectively omitted telling people that they were going to have to redirect Spadina and the great cost that was going to be involved. And while Ms. Lacroix might not be too concerned about spending another $10 million of taxpayers' money, I think a lot of taxpayers might have went, wait, I like this idea, but I sure don't want to spend another $10 million extra to get it. Of course, they didn't let people decide that, did they? And then before they really got a lot of response because they used COVID as an excuse, they just shut it down and said, that's a good enough response, we're going ahead with it, because they had a timeline to try to get funding. So they worked off that. They knew where they needed to end up. What's interesting is that the Meewasin Valley Authority had a video made specifically for that element, stating that that's exactly where the park was going to be and how it's all going to integrate with Meewasin Valley. But they recorded that for that one option before the public engagement was done and they actually had made a decision. So how did the Meewasin Valley know so much dedicated information about this outcome? It's like they could see the future, or could they? I guess Ms. Lacroix doesn't want to answer that one. Finally, let's think about Camponi development and Parkridge. They promoted and put forward a little bit of very racist information and pictures and the whole thing, and that's used that to typify that that's the people that were objecting to this development. And so they washed right over all of the local residents' concerns that were very valid. There was a lot of them about traffic and connections and putting a high-density development at the end of a dead-end street through a residential area. That's a real concern of mine even. And yet they got washed over. And what's also interesting is that Mayor Clark's affordable housing numbers were really low, right up until he squeaked in this Camponi development just before the election. Up until then, he was far below what Mayor Atchison had been achieving before him. So it was a win-win for him. He could announce this project for Camponi, and then he could also get his affordable numbers up, and the rest of it doesn't really matter, does it? So, Ms. Lacroix, if you really want to do public engagement properly, it's time that you learn how to do it or quit talking about it, because you're drawing attention to your failures. You're not talking about successes.